So Father Sweeney will be happy to field your questions, and will field them himself from the robbery. So please go ahead, but do stand, if you will, and project.
Questions, I'm also happy with rebuttal, if someone would like to.
I have a question.
Yes, Cliff.
There's a great deal of talk about lay ministry, and perhaps less talk about lay apostolate. Is it possible this is in any way related to the cult of individualism and the emphasis on autonomy that you've discussed today?
Oh, very good question. Did everyone hear that?
No.
The question is, there's a great deal of talk in the church about ministry, almost none about the apostolate. Might that itself be an indication of the sort of individualism that I'm speaking of? And I would answer, in part, yes, I think it would. Now, historically, in the Christian community, ministry has always spoken to what is internal to the church. And so if you are a minister, you are serving the people of God in some way, as having, in a way, an office in the church, whether formally or informally. And so ministry happens within the people of God. So the service from which we get the word deacon is this sort of ministry. The apostolate has always been spoken of as the movement of the church outside, or extra, okay, for the sake of the world. I think in one sense the Christian community, or Catholic community, in the 60s and 70s turned inward. I think part of the reason for turning inward was a concern about somehow tidying up our own house, perhaps, before we did anything outside. But one of the consequences of that has been that we've almost completely overlooked the apostolate. And we tend to have put our whole effort into building up the Christian community itself. Now, I think also that there is and so we've had our little wars over authority, right? And I think and so it would appear that all authority belongs to the ordained. I think if it appears that way, it is because we've looked only at ourselves within the community. The moment that we look outside the community, the task of the church that is properly lay, and where lay men and women are meant to take leadership, not just follow. And unless we look there, then in a certain sense, there really is only one authority, the pastoral authority in the church. And so we've argued who should be ordained and so on. And part of this, I think, is our incapacity to think of ourselves as a people, as a we. And so, obviously, the culture is going to infect all of us in some way. I do this as an experiment, and I've tried to discipline myself to do it. Try wandering around all day without thinking I. Just try staying with we. It's not easy. Okay? That idiot just cut us off in traffic. It could sound like that, I suppose, but, but it's very hard to stay with we. Very hard. And because all of at our own school, the graduate students whom we have, really, some of them, very hard for them to relax into letting us encourage their work. Or, there's one young man who I'm very impressed with. He's brilliant. He's capable of doing original work in philosophy. And he knows somehow that when we compliment him on his work, that we are simply trying to make him feel good. Because you see, his task is to succeed as an individual. And his work never measures up to his standard. I'm always telling him, by the way, that he thinks that he's attributing us being much nicer than we are. There is, in that sense, an individualism, I think, that really is part of our moral imagination, and part of our task as a laity is to overturn it. And I think one of the places it shows is an emphasis upon, again, ministry, something whereby my own sense of importance, my own contribution can be offered. is emphasized rather than the apostolate, the initiative of the church for the sake of the salvation of mankind. Yes, 1, 2.
I want to raise perhaps a big issue which follows on, and that is the formation of laity, because I've seen a number of people, directors of religious education, who they get up there thinking they're doing lay apostolate, and they're pushing their own agenda.
Yes, yes.
And the businessmen who think, well, a role of the laity is that they'll go out, they use some really strong arm techniques to get a lot of money, and then they give it to the church. That's not very Christian as well. But I
wouldn't put that down entirely. But there are other things needed, yes.
Well, just a couple of examples. But yes, formation, that our clergy go to several years of formation in seminary.
Yes.
And there's a problem how do the lay people, without really understanding the depths of the church, and rather than worrying on Friday whether you ate meat, as they often did, I mean, understanding the depth of the philosophy and theology to actually be effective and have the arguments necessary to go out and do an effective apostolate.
Very nice. There are lots of programs beginning to address this, but none of them all that systematically, and none, I think, with the full cooperation of the Christian community. But I think the Anthony Padua Institute that is sponsoring this event is one such place. My own school is another, where particularly the role of the laity is we're trying to emphasize. But I think that is absolutely right. And what it is necessary for us to do is to think about what really would a lay formation look like. My problem has been that when we have given a formation to the laity, it always looks like that of a priest. So they should have a little scripture, a little history of the church. They should have a little spiritual theology. The sorts of things that are necessary, in other words, if you're going to lead in the Christian community. But what do you require if the political order has been placed in your hands? And now, I'm certainly not prepared to whitewash politicians who presume to speak for the church. But it also occurs to me that practically none of them have received an education proper to their office. And that is not their fault, it is our fault. Our fault, the clergy, if you wish, the leadership first of the church and then the whole church, which in a certain sense has failed them. I think where this begins, of course, is in the family. And I think one of the necessary things is to reclaim and so the council taught that the parents themselves are the first educators of their children, including in the faith. And so formation begins literally in the home, at home. But then we require a real formation that is lay, and so the lay competence, it is true of each of the disciplines. I think the social teaching of the church itself is essential to this task. The church has a wonderful wealth of tradition behind social analysis, and it is one of the best kept secrets in the world. I think that a sense of how to discern one's own gifts, one's own talents, one's own possibilities, and what is also needed for the sake of formation is a conversation about these things, so that it is possible to share insights. St. Thomas Aquinas held that the law, or organizing anything, absolutely requires a conversation, because no one person is going to be able to see all the possibilities. And so we have to think this through. There are some of us who have been working on it for some time, and then we have to institutionalize it. The Council did say, and does say, that an education in the faith that is lay, and a formation for the sake of the lay apostolate is in fact the right and responsibility of the lay person. And so I would say, as a kind of hint, that it is fitting and it is your right, as the church has defined it, to seek this formation and in a certain sense to demand it.